Well, howdy folks, welcome back to the cabin. So we've been getting some questions about the little EcoFan on top of the Cubic Mini here. So I thought I'd take a couple minutes to run through what it is and how it works and how well it works here for us in the cabin. So stick around and we'll have a quick look at the EcoFan. So let's start with what is it? The EcoFan is a little fan that sits on top of a wood-burning stove, and the difference between the hot on the bottom and the cool on the top uses thermoelectric technology in order to create or generate DC current. And so that DC current runs to a little motor in the back of the EcoFan, and in turn runs the blades and runs the fan. So there's no batteries, there's no solar, there's no plugging it in, so that's all really nice. So the EcoFan is intended to move the air away from the stove, move that heat away from the stove, and just circulate your air in the room that it's in a lot better than it would if you didn't have the fan. So that's why we got it. When we first got the little stove in here, all the heat would go straight up to the roof of the cabin, and it would take a while for all of the air in here to sort of mix and circulate, and for all the air to feel the same. We could have a 11 to 12 degree difference between up there and down here, maybe even more on a really cold day. So the EcoFan has been really good at sort of moving that air through, and we'll talk a little bit more about how it does that or what it does. So that's sort of what the EcoFan is. Now you probably want to know how it works. So you can see on the top of the fan there is a set of fins, and then on the bottom of the fan there's kind of a big flat plate. And so what happens is that big flat plate heats up and sends heat up the column here. In between the two, you can see there's sort of a space between the column and the fins on top. And in between that is a Peltier module. And so a Peltier module is just a little thermoelectric module like that. And that's the magic part that makes this thing work. Now these are actually intended originally to be heating and cooling devices. And what happens is if you send current down the lines, one side gets hot and the other side gets cold. And so you can use it for sort of refrigeration, you can use it to create little drink coolers or drink warmers, and that sort of thing, depending on which way you send the current down the lines. It'll heat up one side and cool down the other side. And so that's what the Peltier module does. That said, if you put heat to one side or you put cold to the other side, it actually generates, because of the difference between the heat and the cold, it actually generates a DC current and sends that DC current down those lines. And so it actually becomes a generator, much like a wind turbine is just basically an electric motor, which when it's spun generates power. And so this is a similar thing. So when we heat the bottom and we cool the top, it generates electricity, and that runs the little motor in the back, the little DC motor that runs the fan. So that's basically the magic component. It's a Peltier module, and you can use those for all sorts of stuff. You could create a little phone charger that sits on top of your stove and charges phones. Don't put your phone on the stove. You could create a little light that sits on top of the stove and is powered by that. All sorts of different things that just require a low voltage DC current to make it run like a little motor like this. So like I say, what it does for us here in the cabin is that it takes all that heat that's coming straight off the stove and would normally just go straight up, and only heat a very small sort of space around the stove in its, until it starts to warm everything further out. And what the fan does is it just takes that air and blows it into the room and really starts to circulate the air throughout the room. And you can actually feel, the air sort of moving, especially if you're standing in front of it. Now, I mean, it's not a crazy, commercial style fan that's going to blow a ton of air, but it is remarkable how much difference it makes just moving that air around a little bit with one of these little fans. It does have a little brass handle on the top, so you can grab it. It is hot, the rest of it, so I wouldn't touch the rest of it, but you can move them around so you can aim them. I mean, if you wanted to aim it a little bit more towards your bedding area, or you wanted to send it straight over to the door where all that cold air might be coming in every time you open and close the door, you can do that. So they're a great little unit, and like I say, in here it's made a world of difference in getting that air to circulate around and really get that air to move forward, instead of just up all the time. So it's been a really good little fan for us. We've liked it. So in doing that, in circulating all of the air through here, we get a couple of advantages. Way faster warm-up time. It just heats the cabin faster because it's mixing that air. At least it feels like it's heating it faster because it's mixing that air. It's circulating everything around a lot quicker. And so it does tend to actually heat the cabin faster as a result of it. The efficiency of your fire, therefore, is increased. The company claims they'd actually calculated 18% efficiency. I'm not sure that I have calculated my exact efficiency with it, but certainly you're going to burn less wood if the air is circulating. You don't have cold pockets here and there that you feel like you need to fix. So yeah, efficiency, you're going to have a more efficient fire as a result of it because you're going to burn less wood as a result of it, circulating that air and getting everything going through like that. The other really cool thing is that, I mean, this thing's humming along right now, and I can hear the fire, and I can't hear it. So these things are silent. I mean, really, for all intents and purposes, you cannot hear them as they're ripping, which is awesome, because, you just don't even notice that they're there. They become just sort of part of the fabric of the cabin, and that's that. So, yeah, really nice, super quiet, doesn't make any noise, and I really like that as well. The one thing I would say about them is that they are delicate. We've got 2 or 3 of these for some different stoves that we have, different wood stoves and some different structures that we've got. And I have in the past, had one fall over or sort of bumped it or knocked it. And as soon as the axle for that, or the drive shaft for that motor gets bent, or one of the fins on these things get bent, you can imagine the sort of out of balance kind of wobble that it can get. And it's almost impossible to bend it back to where it needs to be. So I would issue some warning about that, because we've bent 1 or 2, and I got one bent back, but the other one still has a bit of a wobble to it. And so it's not too bad until it gets really hot and really ripping. And once that thing is absolutely just cranking, it'll actually start to vibrate, and it'll just vibrate itself right off the stove. So you got to be careful with that for sure, and make sure you're real careful with them. They're a delicate thing for sure. So make sure you take it off of here if you're going to be dumping wood or that sort of thing. Just move it off to the side and be careful with it if you're going to be cooking up here, that kind of thing. And the other thing is that they do get extremely hot. So that metal is very, very hot on them. And so if you do want to start cooking up here and you want to move it, make sure you don't set it down on anything flammable or on any fabric or anything. It's very hot, so take it down, put it on a chopping block or something like that, or a hot pad, because it is very warm on the bottom of them. Okay, So that's about it. That's the EcoFan. There's a couple of different brands that make them. These are the ones that are locally available to me and easy to find. And I've never had any trouble with them, so I like these ones. Not a paid advertisement, not a sponsorship. I bought all 3 of them. This one I bought new, the other 2 I bought used. So they're just a good little product, and they do work well. So something to share for those of you who want to move some air around on your wood stove. Okay, folks, we'll catch you on the next one.